And we continue at 1:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang has the week off. He'll be back with us on Monday. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a political strategist available on X at The Thomas Guide. John Thomas, welcome.
Hey, John. Great to be with you.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by. So let's start out with the big news coming from the Big Apple, and that is that Rupert Murdoch is now looking at getting involved in the California newspaper industry, and in 2026 plans to open up the California Post, which will be a tabloid, right-of-center newspaper akin to the New York Post in New York City. And he says it's about time that the state of California had a little New York Post of their own, and that's exactly what he plans on doing. What do you make of that?
I think it's actually a pretty big deal. One, I think it reflects Murdoch's view on the success of the New York Post, so that means that's been a successful venture. And the other, John, is it really reflects the absence of any alternative points of view in California in print. You know, outside of you on talk radio, there really isn't anywhere somebody who is right of center or conservative can go to get West Coast news. So this is a welcome addition. I'm sure it'll be met with plenty of outrage, but it's important, especially as small newspapers, local papers have either consolidated or collapsed. It couldn't come at a more important time.
Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, the owner of the LA Times, said that he wanted to provide balance at his paper. He certainly put that information out in the public domain. All of his writers and editorial staff members are certainly aware of that. Yet I've seen nothing in that newspaper that reflects what the owner has said. It seems like the owner certainly wants to go in that direction, but the people who write for that newspaper, the people who write the editorials in particular at that newspaper, have no interest in moving in that direction. Do you think it's going to be possible to change the direction of that paper with the current personnel, or do you think he's going to have to replace the current personnel with people who are open to his vision?
Yeah, this is it's just like in government, John, where they say people are policy. And it's the same thing in a company and definitely the same thing in a media outlet. You can have somebody the top down say they want something, but if it's out of alignment with what the soldiers want, particularly most reporters in print publications are activists masquerading as journalists. So until there is a purge at the Times, I just don't see any meaningful change. And John, it's not like we're talking one editor here. It is the rank and file, probably all the way down to the people who print the physical paper and manage the .com product. They've got to go. I just don't see the appetite to change that many personnel. The only way to really do it is what Murdoch's doing, which is building something from the ground up.
Do you think he understands that? Because I saw after he made his remarks, a number of liberals on my social media feed announced that they would be giving up their subscription to the paper in protest of what they regarded as him bowing to Donald Trump. So he's getting all the negative attention for making that statement, but he's not actually putting out a product that's delivering on what he said he wanted. If you're the owner, you almost are forced in a position to change the personnel and put it out or backtrack, one of the two, because right now you have the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, that's right. He's not persuading anybody on the right side of the aisle to come view the paper. And he's just aggravating his own base. I think the other challenge is, they've positioned themselves as a national outlet, meaning that they're looking for an audience beyond kind of the liberals in LA City, and yet they're putting out a product that only appeals to the liberals in LA City. And if you really want a liberal product, a full liberal product, you're going to go with the New York Times or some other outlet like that. So they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, John. I think they're going to have to tack back, but you can see how the owner thought that this might be a way to recalibrate, to maybe get in a bit better favor with the current administration, but it's just been an abject failure. And I'm sure it's caused the rank and file to really dislike ownership as well, which isn't easy to run a company when the rank and file don't like you.
Last week, the big political news here in California and beyond was that former Vice President Kamala Harris would not be running for governor here in the state of California. It surprised a lot of people. Didn't surprise me. I thought that it would always be a tough putt for her to win that office. And if she won the office, she would have a job that she was not equipped to deal with, and certainly was really rolling the dice in terms of what kind of record she would want to run on nationally. If California is a basket case, that certainly wouldn't work out for her as a national candidate. Were you surprised when she announced that she was taking a pass on running for governor?
Not too surprised. The only reason I guess why I could be surprised is that Kamala's extended family profit as lobbyists off of Kamala being in access and have close proximity to power or wielding it herself. And so I would imagine there would be some pressure from her family members that they want to make money and be relevant. And if Kamala's not in office, they're not quite as relevant, John. But if you look back, Kamala doesn't have any track record on caring about state and local issues in California, never did. She's not a particularly good candidate, certainly for higher office. She has tons of vulnerabilities. And what she's shown to be good at is using her identity to get appointed to things. So if you're Harris, you punt on this and you hope that a Democratic administration in the future would appoint you to being Secretary of State, Supreme Court Justice, National Attorney General, because that's the only thing Kamala seems to be good at, is being given jobs in which she doesn't have to do anything to earn them or do anything once she's in them.
Who benefits the most from Kamala Harris not being in that race?
Oh, boy. That's a great question. I would probably say a Katie Porter. Certainly the Democrats that just had no pathway to raising the kind of money from the establishment they needed with a Kamala in this race. Now that she's not in the race, there's plenty of donors to go to raise money to mount a viable campaign. But it's also opened up the race more broadly for every Democrat, including Rick Caruso. The window pretty much had closed for him after the ICE raids in LA City for him to beat Karen Bass, and his political future looked all but over. But now that this race is open, a guy like Caruso with a big pocketbook might be able to take advantage of all the media markets statewide and be viable. And just like a Katie Porter, who would have been suffocated out because Kamala probably would have sucked all the oxygen out of the room, now she's a player for the moment.
I had a conversation recently with a very, very rich person in Los Angeles who knows Rick Caruso well, who claims that Rick Caruso is in the race for governor 100%, and that decision has already been made. Do you think that that's true?
I don't think the decision's already been made because it's not a total slam dunk, John. And Rick and his people have to know this. So it's not a complete slam dunk. I'm sure the consultants are pushing him because they smell $100+ million payday. So there's probably some pressure there. But John, look, a lot of running statewide, yes, it's the ability to cut checks, but that's not all it is. It's passing purity tests within the Democratic Party. And yes, Caruso bent the knee to the Democratic Party, but he's no Democrat. And I'm not so sure that in the scrum of a Democratic primary that, a billionaire real estate developer, former Republican, passes that purity test against the panoply of Democrats that have given anything to the unions, reliably for decades now. So I don't think it's all a cakewalk. And so I'm sure Caruso would love to snap his fingers and be governor, but I don't think it's all but decided just yet.
You've worked with him in the past, Rick Caruso, when he was a Republican, and I think even as an independent after he left the Republican Party. What is your impression? Is your impression that he believes he's a conservative minded guy, but believes that conservative Republicans are just not electable in any way, shape, or form, citywide or statewide? So he has to change his branding, otherwise, he's not viable. Or do you believe that he actually underwent some sort of ideological conversion? Usually that happens to people when they convert religion or they marry someone new. The new wife can get in their ear and change their politics and change their opinions on things, or the new religion can do the same thing. Do you get the impression that he has had a genuine conversion and is now a liberal Democrat? Or do you think this is just a branding change to get someone who he thought would not be electable into office?
I think there's been no meaningful conversion. First, he's married to the same wife his entire life. Secondly, he's been a Catholic his entire life, and he's the same guy that I met 20 plus years ago as he is today. I think he's a pragmatist, as many real estate developers are, and recognizes that if he wants to implement change, you have to get elected in order to drive those policies. Much in the same way, I think, John, that Bloomberg, although he tacked more to the left, I think at his core, Bloomberg understood that. And also the evolution of Rick. Remember, it smacks of him moving leftward in a long-term position to run for office, as he switched to no party preference and then switched to Democrat. And if you look at his record, John, there's not a lot coming out of him other than the occasional veiled shot at Donald Trump that would indicate that he is a fire-breathing liberal. There really isn't much. So that I think actually, although I appreciate that his core is the same, liberals can smell that a mile away, and I think that's in part why they felt better to vote in the mayor's race on an identity level for the true blue Democrat rather than somebody who's recently registered and just has a D next to his name.
If he were to be elected governor of California, do you think he would govern to the left or the right of Arnold Schwarzenegger?
That's a great question. I think he would essentially be a clone of Schwarzenegger. That's what I think. He would try to virtue signal to the left on issues like climate change and otherwise, and then I think he'd try to deregulate where he could to allow California to grow. But I think he'd largely be kneecapped by the legislature, John. I mean, and the union. So I'm not sure that he would actually be able to get much done. Although, John, I thought California couldn't do much worse than Newsom or Kamala Harris. But now if we're looking at the potential of having a Katie Porter as your next governor, I think California, if it hasn't already gone off a cliff, it's going to go exponentially faster because Katie Porter is an ideologue like AOC and Elizabeth Warren. She believes what she's doing to the left, and she's competent. That scares me more than a Harris or a Newsom ever did.
I think with Caruso, the litmus test will be the bullet train. Because if he goes in and buys the left-wing Kool-Aid that the bullet train is a smashing success, then he really has converted and he's gone. But if he walks in and he goes, okay, this is a boondoggle, it's a waste of money, it's never going to happen, time to cut bait, then okay, we have a fighting chance with him.
I think that's right. And he has every opportunity to say that, John, because he's not been a part of that system that put that boondoggle in place. So that is a great litmus test. That, and I think climate change, those two things. And of course, what he does with the Coastal Commission. If he tries to neuter the Coastal Commission, I think that's also another indicator that he's a pro-growth Democrat, not a standard Democrat.
What do you think happens with Eleni Kounalakis? Because so far, the Democratic establishment, even before Kamala made her announcement, was starting to circle around her. Now that Kamala announced that she would not be running, the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, who comes from the same San Francisco circles as Kounalakis, publicly threw her support behind the lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor is from one of the top 10 richest families in the state of California. She does have the ability to spend Meg Whitman-style money on a race for governor. If you have the Democratic establishment behind you and Meg Whitman-style money, certainly that puts you in the top tier of candidates right there.
Oh, she's certainly viable. I mean, I think her stock has definitely gone up since Kamala bowed out. She's got the means necessary to buy in these expensive media markets, which is usually the limiting factor in a race statewide for governor. But I'm not so sure that being the establishment favorite, John, is going to be a winner in this cycle. I don't know. But what we did see is the establishment prevailed in the Senate race with Adam Schiff. And in fact, one of the reasons Katie bombed is because she's not well liked by the Pelosi's of the world because she doesn't play well in the sandbox. So I think it comes down to, do Californians want an outsider who's going to mix things up, or do they want kind of the establishment endorsement? And then, of course, where do the unions go, John? Where do where teachers go, prison guards go? I think that also will have a lot to do with it. And Elaine's got the resources to hire the consultants to help her navigate that.
Do you think it'll bother Democratic voters that she basically has no record? When you're an ambassador, that's a ceremonial job. You're a fancy alcoholic, and you get to go to all the dinner parties, cocktail parties. When you're lieutenant governor, you wake up in the morning, and if the headline in the newspaper is anything other than Gavin Newsom's dead, you go back to bed because you have no duties. There is no record that you can pin her down on. No one knows what she thinks about any number of subjects, and I'm sure she'll try to mold herself to fit the moment when she runs for governor, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she believes any of it. Do you think that that's going to hurt her, or people will look at her credentials and say, "Oh, ambassador, lieutenant governor, it seems like she's qualified for the office, so yeah, why not?"
Well, that's actually been the knock on her from more insiders, John, is I don't think whether you're a Republican or Democrat insider, you really don't know what she stands for. So she's going to have to overcompensate with that, and partially that's going to be with prominent endorsements. Look, I would say if you look at Barack Obama when he ran for president, he really didn't have much of a record at all at that point. So Democrats seemed to be okay with it back then. I think it depends how Elaine's opponents exploit that. If you've got a Rick Caruso in the race, and he determines it's in his interest, he'll have the ability to frame her as a do nothing, no accomplishment placeholder. I tend to think because of Elaine's giving history that she'll be able to roll out Barack Obama, Joe Biden, the standard voices that you would imagine. And it might not just be because of her donor history. It might be, John, because the establishment doesn't want Porter. So I think if Elaine veils herself in all of those third-party validators, that might be enough for her to get across.
John Thomas, Republican political strategist. You can follow him on X at The Thomas Guide. John, thanks so much for stopping by. A pleasure as always.
Thanks again.
Here's a question at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. If Rick Caruso runs as a Democrat but will govern as Arnold Schwarzenegger, are you willing to vote for him over registered Republicans, people like Chad Bianco or Steve Hilton? If they can't raise the money to make them viable candidates, but Rick Caruso can write a check to make himself viable, even if he's not a Republican, would you trust him enough to give him your vote? 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Your calls coming up right here on The John Phillips Show. It's The John Phillips Show. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Would you be willing, if you're a Republican, to vote for Rick Caruso, a Democrat, but a conservative-minded businessman, over Republicans like Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton? I'm curious to hear from you at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Your calls coming up right here on The John Phillips Show. About selling your home, and you've heard about Seller's Advantage on the radio or seen them around town, you might be skeptical, wondering if they're just another shady company trying to take advantage. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Sellers Advantage has been buying homes from sellers in Southern California for over 20 years. They hold an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, and there's a reason they have some of the best reviews in town. Sellers Advantage will make you a competitive cash offer that can match what you'd expect what you'd end up with after paying for expensive repairs and agent commissions without the hassle of listing your home. Plus, they take pride in buying on your terms. If you want to sell your home, call Sellers Advantage for a no-obligation offer at 888-303-AS-IS. That's 888-303-AS-IS, 888-303-2747, or find them online at sellersadvantage.com. DRE number 01961658. It's the John Phillips Show. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. We just spoke with political strategist John Thomas, who's worked with Rick Caruso when he was a Republican and an independent. He said he doesn't think Rick Caruso's politics, personal politics, have changed over time at all. He's just changed his branding so he can be electable if he runs statewide. Would you be willing to vote for Rick Caruso? And if you're a Republican, would you be willing to vote for Rick Caruso over Steve Hilton or Chad Bianco, the sheriff of Riverside County, both of whom are candidates for governor? 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Let's begin with Ann in Studio City. Ann, hello.
Hi, yes, I am a Republican. I do not think Bianco has any chance. I think that Steve Hilton could raise tech money, and he has been make California golden again. I think he has a good campaign up until through November. I am voting for Hilton. But if the day before election, if it seems like he doesn't have a chance, then I would have to vote for Caruso. If we have to have a Democrat, it has to be Caruso.
I think a lot of people are going to be in the same boat as you, which is they look at Bianco, they look at Hilton, they pick their favorite, and they say, okay, if one of you two can start raising a lot of money and start putting up polls showing viability, then I'm with you 100%. But if you're going to overpromise and underdeliver and not raise the money that you need to be viable and not produce polls showing that you have viability as a candidate, that I'm going to go with the guy I think can block someone like Katie Porter or Eleni Kounalakis or fill in the blank, Antonio Villaraigosa, from becoming governor and from continuing to wreck the state as Gavin Newsom has for 8 years.
Yes, I think a lot of people will go along with my idea.
All right. Time will tell, but I think you're on to something there. Thank you for the call, Ann. Let's go to Robert in Santa Clara. Robert, hello.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I would vote for Caruso. I think he's like a five-tool player, drafting a baseball player. He's got the skills to get things built back, and he's going to diversify the type of housing inventory. Be open-minded to that and not go completely stack and pack, Altadena and whatever. And also he's probably going to try to get some sort of forestry done where we need to cut these fire roads in the hills and maybe a little fair arbitrary amount of lumbering and critter-friendly, of course. I think he's got the communication skills. He's got to put himself out there that he's got the tools. He's the five-tool player. Kamala Harris and all these other people are just ideologues, and they're not what the state needs. I mean, the state needs somebody who has the tools to succeed. As these other people are just, they're just kind of pandering to their base of, sort of hysterically minded, just this lunatic fringe, pretty much. And it's, we need a guy like Rick or Steve, people who have experience and are, common sense people.
It'll be interesting to see how much he leans into his background as a builder, because you're right. If you're a builder and you know how to fix things and you know how to put up big elaborate things like shopping malls, lickety split, you could go to the people of California and say, hey, here's the deal. You guys approved a bond some years ago to do things like build reservoirs, and you had a fire in the Pacific Palisades and the reservoir was empty and there was no water in the fire hydrants. If you elect me, That's not going to happen on my watch. We live in a state where you're spending billions of dollars on a bullet train that's never going to happen. I'm a builder. If anyone can get projects done, it's me. I can look at the books and I can tell you it's time to cut bait and it's time to spend that money elsewhere. You live in a state where all the schools look like prisons. Why in the world would that be the case? We need to get smart with how we spend our money on building, and we need to make the state pretty again. The state is dirty. You drive around Los Angeles, you drive around Oakland, there's trash everywhere, there's graffiti everywhere, there's RVs that are not operable parked everywhere. People who are builders and build things like the Grove, they don't put up with that. The Grove looks like Main Street USA. It looks like Disneyland. If you want that version or that vision of California, then I think he could make a strong case to vote for him. Now, if he's trying to sell himself as a Democrat and he's not actually ideologically there, then leaning into being a builder could result in comparisons to Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump, before he became a politician, was certainly one of the most famous developers, and if not the most successful developer in the United States. And I'm sure the Democratic consultants that will be running Rick Caruso's race will tell him you cannot put yourself out there in a way that would result in comparisons to Donald Trump because Democrats hate Donald Trump. They're already suspicious of you, so don't talk about your time as a builder. I could see him doing that too. I think it would be a mistake, but I could see the consultants trying to talk him into that.
Well, I was thinking that, even though like locally here in San Jose, they just recently came out about work visas, and they were kind of leaning, well, you can't get deported and there's protection. But we need the work visa thing, and I think he'd be on board with that, working with guys like Tom Mahan, who's, he's for housing first, but, he's not against law enforcement, which are local guys, like Tom, and Dan McCarthy. They're pro-police. And you can be pro-police and be a Democrat. So I think we got a lot of pluses there. You can work with them, too.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Fred in Los Angeles. Fred, hello.
Hello. Hey, John. How you doing? Great show as always.
Thank you.
Having worked for Caruso in the past, I know him to be a hard-working and honest individual. And he's a lot like Trump, though. He does what he says he's going to do, and it gets done. So I'm part of law enforcement. I'm a retired policeman, but it's kind of a nip and tuck with me. I'm between Chad Bianco and Rick Caruso, but I would have to go to Caruso because of his record of getting things done, of building. That's going to be his strength, and correcting what's wrong with the state, which is a lot, as you know. So I would have to go with him, I think, in a final analysis.
All right.
Just because I know him more personally.
Thank you for the call, sir. I appreciate that. Let's go to Kel in Beverly Hills. Kel, hello.
Hi, that's Carol.
I'm sorry, Carol in Beverly Hills. Welcome.
That's okay. Thank you. Bianco for governor all day long. Steve Hilton, lieutenant governor. And I believe a position should be created for Rick Caruso, which would be Secretary of the Interior. Make this state look like the Grove.
Hey, I'd be for that. Just don't charge me for parking.
Don't get me started. And another thing is the issue I would never vote for Caruso for governor is because before the election and after the election, he's in the hospitality business. He will be in that business long after this. He has to be a nice guy. I've seen him walking around the Grove. He's a modern-day Mr. Rourke. He's saying hello to people. He's waving. He's got the tan. He's got the dog, and he's just like this perfect California-looking guy with a big smile. He's not going to be mean enough because he has to go back to that, and that's not what we need.
All right. Thank you for the call. Let's go to George in L.A. George, hello.
Hey, guys. Your ideal lineup would be Bianco for governor, and we need to get Bass out, bring Caruso back in, the mayor. And I think that lineup would be best for California and LA.
If he doesn't run for mayor of LA, I don't see a scenario where she loses re-election. He's the only one who can beat her.
Exactly. Right now, if he would have announced that he was running for mayor during the fires, he would have had it locked in right away.
Yeah, I was surprised that he didn't because he was vocal, he was active. He was the one that told us there was no water in the fire hydrants. That was him on Fox 11.
Exactly. Yeah, I think so. Bianco for governor, Lieutenant Governor Hilton, and then you bring in Caruso to mayor. California would start seeing a shift in everything, and I think we would actually almost not completely right the ship, but at least start the process.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Patricia in Anaheim Hills. Patricia, hello.
Hi, John. Thank you. I just want to ditto the guy that just spoke. I like his plan. I'm definitely for Chad. I don't want Caruso as governor, but I can see him as mayor and Hilton as lieutenant governor. Thank you very much.
All right. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Would you vote for Rick Caruso for governor over Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton? More of your calls coming up right here on The John Phillips Show. It's The John Phillips Show. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Professor Barbara Stone joins us at the top of the hour. Right now, we're taking your calls at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Would you be willing to vote for Rick Caruso, a Democrat, over Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco, both Republicans, for governor if Rick Caruso is the one showing the viability? Let's go back to the phones and begin with Richard in Los Angeles. Richard, hello.
Yeah, great show, John. You know, I still think Tony Vargas, he's got a good chance. He built Staples Center, and then we look at that bridge over the 405. It's still done on time, and it's a beautiful bridge. So he knows how to put projects together. He's not more of a private, but more of what people need. Things we just forget, the things he's done, that we need it. So you look at even Staples Center. I mean, they renamed it, but I mean that area has been well developed and it's sustained that development. So I'm not putting nothing down on Caruso, but we got to think about the general public.
Okay, here's a question for you. The Democratic Party just dumped their candidate, Joe Biden, because he was too old and they didn't think he had the mental capacity or physical stamina, I guess I should say, to run a general election campaign against Donald Trump. We saw Dianne Feinstein die in office at the age of, I believe it was 90. We've seen other members of Congress that, one, just disappeared, and it turned out she was in a memory care facility, Kay Granger from Texas. And that turned into a big controversy down in Texas. It's been a really long time since Antonio Villaraigosa has been in elected office, and an even longer time since he was Speaker of the Assembly. I think that goes back to the 1990s. Do you think, as someone who would be in his 80s, should he be elected governor and reelected, the voting public is willing to roll the dice on someone of that age?
Well, you got to look at the experience that he had. And you look at a younger person. Yeah, I grew up in the 60s, so you had candidates that were younger. And, you got to put it Biden. Biden was vice president for a while, so he's been in office forever. Anyway, and, just the breakfast didn't change, so he figured like he would die in office. So technically, the things that he does is basically on things he's seen in the past. So as far as to keep people happy, you have to have experience, and to just ad hoc and just guess to try to make yourself look good to build for other people's money is not the way to go. So that's why I go with Tony, because he actually put that, the Lakers and things like that together for people to be happy. So we got to look at that side too, not just because, the people have wealth and they want a successful business. That's not the point. This is public office.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Ken in Studio City. Ken, hello.
Hi, John. Thank you for taking my call. Are you ready for an extremely unpopular opinion?
Go ahead.
Okay. No, I will not vote for Rick Caruso, and I didn't. I sat out the mayor's election because here's why. A previous caller told you that he's a lot like Donald Trump. Republicans never learn. He's nothing like Donald Trump. We voted for Donald Trump twice successfully to be president because he was principled. Rick Caruso, he's not principled. You were talking with Thomas. Oh, God, what was his first name? I'm nervous.
John.
I forget. John Thomas, about how neither of you knows where Rick Caruso stands on big issues like the bullet train, like climate change, like several other big issues. Trump, you know where he stands. He's principled. Rick Caruso, he's a chameleon. He went from Republican to declined to state to Democrat. Those ads that he ran during the mayoral campaign where I'm a proud Democrat, that was just disgusting. That turned my stomach. He's a chameleon. He's the head of the Machiavellian party. And Republicans never learn. He will be the second worst elected Republican in the state behind the pseudo-quasi-Republican Arnold Schwarzenegger, who, as soon as he had one tough fight, he rolled over and put his legs up for the unions like a puppy dog. And Caruso, while I don't think he'll be quite as bad as Schwarzenegger, who was horrible, who's a fake Republican, I don't think he has any strong principles, and we never learn. We voted for Trump for principles, and Rick Caruso doesn't have them, and he's not told us of any. So, no, I won't vote for him.
All right. Thank you for the call. Let's go to Chris in Westlake Village. Chris, hello.
Hey, John, I'd have to disagree with the last caller, as I want Caruso for the mayor of Los Angeles because that's the only hope for things such as the Olympics coming in 2028. He literally would hopefully be like Rick Riordan and save it because if Karen Bass is in, I don't know, I'm a little bit worried. But anyway, I'm rooting for the best Republican for governor. And but how do we turn, California red? And I have to say, last week when I called about the fire aid, I was wrong. It was 1,250 homes burned, divided by 100 million is $80,000 per home. Now, if they gave just $20,000 to each per victim, that would leave $75 million to steal. And this should go down until every star that was ripped off that performed there to turn against the Democrats. And let's make this happen because we got to look at the bigger picture here. And thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. We have one more hour coming up on the John Phillips Show. Professor Barbara Stone joins us next. Don't you go anywhere.